Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bettinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this little set of mini cards and then the matching box with the belly band for them to go into. And I started out by making a handful of these little note cards, and it was inspired by the fact that I found a whole box of envelopes that were big enough to hold a card that measured 3 inches by 5 inches. So I came up with this card so that I could send out some thank you notes and just some little notes in hand. I like having note cards on hand. And then I got to thinking about the in colors and the paper that you can get that is all of the in colors in a variety of different patterns. And so I came up with the idea of being able to use these papers in this way. Let me just take some of these out so you can see them. They come in a couple of different patterns. There is this floral pattern here, and on the back side of it are these little almost fleur-de-lis. And so that is a couple of pages each in each color. So there is just quite a few of them. And they come in all of the in colors this year. So in the powder pink, tranquil tide, fresh fig, and the berry burst. And so I have made a set using this particular pattern. I kind of like that pattern. But in addition to that, there is this set of patterns in here. And let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 each of each color that have this pattern on one side and this pattern on the other side. Or in that same color scheme, they have this pattern on one side and this pattern on the other. And I think that the entire package of papers, and I think it's like 44 papers, is like $22. It's just a heck of a bargain, particularly if you have to make lots of things like I do for classes, where I need to do lots of replications for things. And this is absolutely made to order for that kind of thing. Besides which, some of these patterns are just absolutely gorgeous and can do all kinds of crazy things as far as your card making is concerned. This is a wonderful assortment of papers to have. So what I did was I made cards out of the 5 in colors. Now, what I'm going to do today is just change this up a little bit, only because I decided that I'd like to have a backing in the color that matches behind this. They seemed just a little plain to me, and so I have started a few of them. And let me make a stack of these so I can kind of get them out of the way and tell you a little bit about what you need here. So this is the style that I'm going for now. Let me get the comparing one, and you can see that this is going to be a little bit more rich looking than this one, and it'll have, I think, a little bit more depth, a little bit more interesting pattern here to add the layering piece behind this. So this is how I'm going to change it up to date. The colors will be the same, but the style that I'm using to put these together. So in order to make this, you need to have 5 pieces of paper that measure 7. I gotta get my ruler out here to make sure I'm accurate on I changed my mind so many times on this. Yes, this is 7 inches, and I believe by 5 inches. Yes, so 7 by 5, and then scored at 3.5. So these are 3.5 by 5 inches. And you need, in order to do what I'm doing and make the little box, I made 5, one in each of the in colors. And I think for yourself, it's a nice thing to have and a way to put them away. And I think this makes a lovely gift. A beautiful little hostess gift to take to someone who's you're going over for dinner, or you're doing something like that, and just to bring a little something along for the hostess. These things are always welcome. And so what I have started was, so that it didn't get too tedious watching, I have put together a couple of these already, and I have the others ready to go right here. So, and the other thing that you'll need is a piece of vellum and a scrap piece of the solid colors of the in colors behind to make this little label. And then this is a 1-inch by 12-inch strip of the same color that you make your box out of. And I thought it might be kind of fun to mix up, and so we'll make the box out of something different this time as well. Okay, so in order to get started on this, I need to adhere these papers on top of here, and I'm doing that with Snail. So let me just go ahead and fold and burnish a couple more of these Whisper White cards to make my little card bases for these note cards. So I have 2 more here, which I will go ahead and then just adhere these. These note cards are actually quite simple. When your paper is beautiful like this, it can save you an awful lot of trouble and give you quite a big impact for not very much work and effort. And yet, you've gone through the effort to make a card for somebody or make a set of cards for somebody. And I think that shows the level of care, and the idea that they're handmade, I think is just delightful. So let me add this one and center it on this card base here. And there we go. We have all 5 of our card bases set and ready to go. Now, so what I need then in order to complete this is each of these inks in the in colors. So I've got my Lemon Lime Twist, my Tranquil Tide, my Fresh Fig, my Powder Pink, move some of these things completely out of the way, and then we will make our box as well out of the, let's see, which one of these am I missing? I'm missing Berry Burstin. It's right here. Okay, so now I need some scrap white paper, and so I've got some scrap white, and here, so the stamp sets that I'm using for this are Bloomin' Love, and I am using this little spray of flowers, this floral piece here, and I think that's all from there. Then I'm using from the Label Me Pretty this label down here. I think you can see that. This one here. Let me make sure that I showed this one correctly. This and this. Then this label. And then I used, from the Eastern Beauty, I used this cute little hello that's here in this stamp set. And so those are the stamps that I am using. And I've got mine all mounted. And so the first thing I have is my Label Me Pretty stamp here. And I'm going to go ahead and put my label down in my color. And then for this, I decided to use my Stamp-A-Majig. And I don't know how many times I've shown this one on camera, maybe not many, if at all. Stamp-A-Majig is a wonderful positioning tool that's very inexpensive. And what you do is you use your stamp by placing this paper, this heavy-duty kind of plastic that comes with the actual Stamp-A-Majig here. And the Stamp-A-Majig is basically a T-bar. So it creates a square corner on either side. And what you do is you place this down on a surface and tuck it into this corner here. And then you go ahead and take whatever it is you're going to stamp, ink up, and stamp right down on the paper. And what that allows you to do then is to use this to put any place and say, help get that centered. So I'd like that centered right in the middle of that. Now, you do have to have your paper stay still. So I'm going to use just a little bit of repositioning tape there to hold that down. Now then, I'm going to put this back, and I want my hello, make sure that's on camera, it is, right in the middle there. So I can bring my T-bar over now, my Stamp-A-Majig, and I know that if I put my stamp down right there, I'll come out with exactly that result. So now I can take my stamp and come right down, move the T-bar away, and then I've got my greeting exactly centered. And so it's an inexpensive way without a MISTI or without some of the other devices that are out there. And I think you can pick one of these up on the Stampin' Up site for about $12. And I use mine and use it and use it. And what you do when you're done, I've used it also for the flower that's going to go on the vellum, is you just wash this away and you're ready to go again. So you could put multiple images down on this for a project, and it's very, very effective. So there's that there, and that is in my Berry Burst. So I'm going to get my Berry Burst card here, and I'm going to use my Label Me Pretty punch, and I am going to punch out that sentiment, and then I am going to also, and I'll show you exactly how to use this tool again by using another corner here to set up this stamp here, this little floral spray. So I've got this set in here, and I'm going to bring this down and put it in place here on my sheet. Now, when I go to place that on my card, I want this on the inside, and I want it pretty well centered. I can bring back my Stamp-A-Majig, and now I'm assured of getting my floral spray right down here where I want it centered nicely. So with those of us that have trouble with straight, this is a godsend. So there we go, and it'd be real simple to put this on the outside of your envelope as well. So there we go, we have that one done, and my label is ready for here, and I'm going to put that up on dimensionals. There, that card is done. Nice and simple, and just a nice thing to have on hand, a note card. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add a label and do the stamping on the inside here in these other colors, and I'll be right back. Okay, I am back, and I have completed the stamping and the labels for all of my little cards. And so these little cards are all ready to go, and I have my 5 envelopes here to go with my cards, and we'll just set those aside for the moment because now we're going to concentrate on making our box and belly band that's going to close on our box here. Now, so what you'll need to do that is to pick a color and to have your paper cut to 8.5 by 8.5. And so the cards themselves, and I'll bring this up a little bit so you can see it, and I hope you can see it. My cards are 3.5 by 5. And according to that, to make an envelope to fit, this is the envelope punch board, then you need a piece of paper, 7.25, pardon me, 7.25, 3.5 by 5, so you need 7.25 by 7.25. And in order to make this a box, we need to add 1.25 inches to that size. So if our box, according to the envelope, or our envelope, would have to be 7.25 square, then we're going to add 1.25 to that, and that gets us to 8.5. So 8.5 square is what we need to make it a box. Now, the other thing that this does is 3.5 by 5. It says start at 3 1/8 inch. So 3 1/8 inch, and we are going to add 1/8 of an inch to that. So we are going to start at 3 1/4. So 8.5 inches square. So you add 1.25 to make a box, and then 1/8 of an inch for the starting place. All right, so what I'm going to do is bring in the punch board here, and here's my piece that's 8.5 inches square, and we are going to start at 3 1/4. So I'm going to very carefully set this down to 3 1/4. Oh, and I can use my bone folder. It comes with a little scoring tool here, but I left mine where I was working last. So 3 1/4, and what you're going to do is punch and then score down the page. Now this is going to run out of room, or I guess it'll just barely make it. So you want to punch and score. Then we are going to move this over 1 inch. So we're going to go all the way over to 4 1/4. So 4 1/4, and I'm going to punch. Oops, let me reset that at 4 1/4. So I punched, and then I'm going to also score. Now, to use the envelope punch board, all you really need to do is turn this around. You see the score marks there, and set this little flange here right on top of the score line. And in this case, it comes out to 4 1/4 along here. And so we're going to punch and score. Then we're going to move it to the next mark, which turns out to be about 5 1/4. And we're going to punch and score. Make sure that punched. Okay. So punch and score. All right. No, it didn't. There we go. Now we're going to turn this around and do exactly the same thing. We're going to lay this little flange here right along that edge, and it comes back to 3 1/4, which is kind of where we started here. So I'm going to punch. It keeps moving and I don't want it to move. There. And score. And then move it over to the next line, which is 4 1/4. And we're going to punch and score. Okay, and we're going to move this on around and all the way around the box here. So right back at 4 1/4, punch and score. And you know you've scored right when your score marks come out right at the V of where you've punched from before. Okay, then I'm going to move this down to this one, and that should be about 5 1/4. And I'm going to punch and score. Okay, so there I have my 4 corners, my 4 pieces of paper punched and scored. Now, I have to decide which is going to be the top of my box, and it doesn't really matter as long as it's one of these larger pieces here, and put that on the back side of my punch board, and what that does is it rounds that corner. There we go. So a nice rounded corner for the top of my envelope here, my envelope closure. All right. Now, I'm going to move this envelope punch board out of the way and get rid of that stuff. All right. And now we're going to do a little bit of cutting. I like to do my cutting before I fold and burnish. And I am going to cut up this score line here to the next score line, and on both sides. Okay, and what I've done is created a little flap on this side. And on this end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that little corner piece off. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So I'm just going to take that little corner piece off. I didn't cut that very straight. And cut that little corner piece away. There we go. Excellent. Now we have one more thing to do, and I'm going to do this on my trimmer because I have such a hard time with straight. And I'm going to, you'll notice here, I've got a pointed end here, and here I cut that piece off. And so what we're going to do is set this so that I know I'm cutting off something nice and straight. Put one point at the 5-inch mark, and then bring my bottom point to that same place on the cutter, and just slice off that little piece of card there. Now I've got a nice neat corner, neat edge. Now then, I'm going to fold and burnish my score lines here. I've got these 2 little flaps, and the biggest thing here is to make sure that this edge lines up with the score line on that side, and burnish that, and the same thing here. Bring up this edge to match the score line on that side and burnish that edge. Okay, Now from here, we're just going to fold up this box-like piece of card. So I am going to use Tombow because I really want this to stick. So I'm going to put a little bit of Tombow here on this flap. It looks like that's probably going to ooze some on this side, so I'll clean that up a little bit before I close my... All right, so now what I'm going to do is bring these two edges together and fold that flap in, and I want a really crisp corner here. Now I'm just going to hold that in place for a second to let Tombow get its grip. And your box has the better chance of not being wonky if you can get as crisp a corner as possible down here with that little tab. Okay, I think that's enough. Now what I'm going to do is put some Tombow on this flap and do the same thing. So I'm going to spread my Tombow around there. And again, I think I've got a little bit too much on there. That's okay. Now I'm going to fold that in and match up those two corners as well to get, again, as crisp a corner as possible. And I'm going to hold it shut. As you can see, I'm getting a little Tombow out of the end there, but that's okay. The beautiful thing about Tombow is it dries clear. So I'm going to hold that in place for a second. All right. So now I've got a nice square bottom to my box. Now what I'm going to do is complete my box shape by folding these two pieces in and bringing this piece up. Now, I am going to put my cards and my envelopes in here to help give the box some shape. I want something to kind of press down on here in order to get this closed right. So what I know is that I'm going to need some glue, and I can put it all but right in here. Let me put those little pencil marks so I can see them a little bit more clearly. I can put my glue just on the inside, and I don't want to come beyond those marks because then I'll have some glue that'll be exposed to the innards of my box. So there I've got my marks right here, and I've got a mark here and a mark here. So I just want to put my Tombow around here on the corner and coming up this edge and around this corner, and I'm going to avoid that spot with a little bit of a margin. I don't want to take any chances on it. And so again, Tombow along this side, up this edge, around this corner, and have a little respect for that little spot there. And then closing my box to get it as square as I possibly can here. I'm going to fold this over and put that flap into place. And get my glue set down. I can press down a little because I've got that material. And I did leave my flap in place a little too long, so I've got a little glue on here, but as soon as that's dry, I'll use my glue eraser and that'll come right off. So now I really have a nice square box. And there's a little bit of play here. I've got a tiny little margin on either side of that flap, but I think that's fine. So the next thing we're going to do, now you could take the time to cut some pieces if you wanted to, some additional decoration on your box, and use a different kind of closure on here, but I wanted to make this reasonably simple. I wanted to have the closure on this be simple and the decorations on the outside of this box be quite simple as well, so that it is not real complicated to get done. But there's all kinds of things that you could add in the way of a big flower down here for this to tuck behind for closure. For me, I decided to just do, like I said, again, something fairly simple. I'm trying to get my glue off of this flap now. And I think that's pretty well it. Okay. So now what I have is this piece of the designer series paper that matches one of the cards on the inside. And I decided that I wanted this to fold around here and do its closing on the back and sort of towards the bottom. So I'm going to manipulate this around until I get the idea of getting this particular piece here down towards the bottom of this box. And what I'm going to do, rather than score this, I decided to just fit it. So I'm going to finger pinch the belly band here along these sides, and I've done that so that it's got plenty of margin to move along the box here. So now I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to take those places and line up my paper and just give it a little bit of an additional finger score here and on both sides. So folding that so that it's nice and square, and just giving this a little bit more of a finger fold. All right, now this belly band should go on here, close around this box, and I can secure this down so that this piece that covers over here is along the bottom end of the back of my box. So what I'm going to do is, let's see here, I'm going to fold this up and put a little mark there, and I don't want my glue to go any further down than that. So I'm going to put my glue on this belly band, and I'm going to not go along too close to the edges, and going to line this up with my best eye and close that belly band down over on itself. And there we have a nice belly band that moves quite easily and will definitely hold our box closed. Now, what I did was I used, let's see, I have to find my piece of vellum that I had here. There it is. And what I did was I used my label punch here, and I punched out a label that matched the color of my box, and I didn't like the way that looked. It looked just a little too predictable. So and you really could do this before you start your project, because it does take ink on vellum a little bit longer to dry. Hopefully we'll be able to get this done. Start that over again. I don't like that ink going down around the edges. So I'm going to tap that again and put it down here. There we go. And then I have this little flower that came out of the, what is it called again? This Bloomin' Love, and it's this one right here. And I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Majig again. I stamped my little flower on the corner here, and I want to get that centered in the middle of my vellum piece. So okay, I got my ink in the middle and I got my flower stamped, and that's going to need a second to dry. And I might be able to blot up some of that ink. Let me see if that's possible without smearing, so that I can work with this a little faster. As long as I don't move my blot, then I think that will be dry enough to work with, and we'll know for sure in a second. Yeah, that's nice and ready to go. All right, so now I'm going to use my label punch here again, and I am going to punch out that image, and it's tone on tone, so when I lay this on top of this piece, look how pretty that came out. Just a little bit off, and I tried it this way and I didn't like it near as well as when I put it on this way. And I did raise it on dimensionals. So what I'm going to do to secure this in place, vellum, as you know, is challenging to get glued down, but there are some definite things that you can do to make it a little bit easier for yourself. The first of which is we have this nice big flower here in the middle. So I'm going to take a glue dot and lay that down on that flower, because I don't think from the front you'll be able to see that at all, and you don't. So then I took another glue dot and folded it over on itself so it's about half its normal size, and I laid it on one of these leaves here also, so that it wouldn't show from the front. Then one more glue dot, and this one I'm going to fold over on itself and then over again, so that I have really just a little blob. And I am going to place that on the back of this flower here. Again, that won't show from the front. Then I'm going to take a little bit of Tombow on my inky finger here and I'm going to smear a little bit of it on this end and smear a little bit of it on this end. And then I'm going to take this whole thing and lay it down right on top of this other label. And there we go. Now I have to wipe ink off glue off my fingers in order to be able to do that. But just like when you use a sponge to put adhesive on the back of vellum so that you don't see it, smearing some around really leaves you at the position where you really don't see any of that glue on there. And then this can be placed here on my belly band, and I think that's very attractive. So what I'm going to do is put some dimensionals right down the middle of my box, or my label, pardon me, and place that on the belly band of my box. Right there. And there we have our project. So what we have are the original cards, which didn't have a mounting layer on them. And then we have a new box here with our cards and their envelopes with the additional piece of the mounting. And I don't know about you, but I think this looks more finished. I like these and I'll use them up. There's no doubt about that. But from a visual appeal, I like the this mounting piece here on the back of these cards much better. So that is the project for today. And I hope, thank you very much for stopping by and watching my YouTube channel. And anything that's here can be ordered on my 24/7 shop, www.albedinger.stampinup.net. And I hope you'll give this a try. And you can certainly put any kind of sentiment. You can put thank yous in here. You can put just a note. There's a lot of things that you could do. This little hello one kind of appealed to me, but there's all kinds of things you can do. And I made my box to match this one, so when I put these cards in here, I'll put this one up front. And so there we go. That's the project for today. And I hope you enjoyed that. And the prize draw for this month is 3 packages of designer series paper, the Daisy Delight designer series paper, the Lots of Lovely, and the Naturally Eclectic. And just put an order in with me and you automatically get into the drawing for that prize at the end of the month. And so again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.